It wasn't the smell that tipped me off. That's the first thing you have to understand. In this neighborhood, specifically here on Sycamore Court, people assume that if a woman moves into a 3-bedroom ranch with 22 cats, the ammonia stench will be the first violation of the HOA covenants. But there was no smell, there was no noise, and that was the problem. Cats are agents of chaos. I've lived in the suburbs long enough to know the rhythm of a normal pet. They yowl at 3 a.m., they knock over trash cans, they get run over by teenagers texting in Toyotas. But Mrs. Higgins' cats, they didn't do any of that. It was their behavior that triggered my observation. They didn't wander, they patrolled. My name is Arthur, and I watch things. I don't mean that in a voyeuristic way, despite what the lady at number 404 thinks. I mean I pay attention. I notice when the mailman changes his route. I notice when the streetlights flicker in Morse code intervals before burning out. And I noticed Mrs. Higgins. She moved in 3 weeks ago, a rental, cash up front, 6 months in advance.
I checked with the property manager's secretary, who likes gin and talks too much at the local dive. Mrs. Higgins looked the part. Oversized knitted cardigans, orthopedic shoes, hair like spun sugar. A grandmother from Central Casting. Then came the moving van. No furniture, just crates. Heavy, reinforced plastic crates with air holes. The next morning, the perimeter was established. I was drinking my coffee, standing at my second-story window with the blinds angled down. It's the best vantage point. I saw 3 tabbies exit the back door. They didn't frolic. They split up. One went to the top of the garden shed. One sat by the back gate. The third crawled under the porch lattice. They froze. They sat perfectly still for an hour. Their heads rotated in sync. Left, center, right. It wasn't animal instinct. It was a grid search. "You're seeing things, Artie," I muttered to myself, adjusting the focus on my Nikon binoculars. I keep them for birdwatching, officially. I zoomed in on the tabby on the shed. A large male, left ear clipped. He wasn't sleeping.
His eyes were wide, pupils dilated, scanning the alleyway behind our houses. A squirrel ran across the fence line. Usually, a cat would bolt after it. The tabby didn't flinch. He tracked the squirrel with his eyes until it left the designated zone, then snapped his gaze back to the alley entrance. Discipline. That's what it was. Unnatural, military-grade discipline. Over the next week, I mapped their shifts. 0600 hours, the morning crew comes out. 6 cats, 2 on the roof, 2 at the fence line, 2 roaming the perimeter. 1200 hours, shift change. The morning crew retreats inside. The afternoon squad emerges. These ones were bigger, Maine Coons and ragdolls, heavy hitters. 2000 hours, the night watch, black cats, almost invisible. I started taking notes in my logbook. Subject, the Higgins compound. On Tuesday, the delivery arrived. It wasn't Amazon. It was a dark gray courier van, unmarked. It pulled into her driveway at 2 p.m. The driver didn't get out. He lowered the window. Mrs. Higgins came out on the porch. She wasn't using her cane.
That was the first crack in the mask. She moved fluidly, stepping over a sleeping calico without looking down. She walked to the van, handed the driver a small metallic drive, looked like a solid-state hard drive, and took a thick manila envelope in return. The exchange took 4 seconds. As the van backed out, a neighborhood dog, a golden retriever named Buster, who belongs to the idiots at number 408, broke loose from his leash. Buster is a friendly, dumb missile of fur. He saw the open driveway and bolted for Mrs. Higgins. This is where the theory became reality. Mrs. Higgins didn't flinch. She didn't scream. She made a low, clicking sound with her tongue. Tss, 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 tss. The reaction was instantaneous. 3 cats I hadn't even seen, camouflaged in the hydrangeas, launched. They didn't attack to kill, they attacked to divert. One latched onto Buster's tail, another hissed and slashed across his nose, and the third wove between his legs. Buster tripped, yelping. The cats scattered immediately, vanishing back into the bushes.
Buster ran home, traumatized. Mrs. Higgins stood on the driveway, smoothing her cardigan. She looked up, not at the sky, but directly at my window. I ducked. My heart was hammering against my ribs. She knew. The suburbs are a great place to hide things because nobody wants to look too closely. Everyone is terrified of being rude. But I'm not. I needed to know what was in that house. You don't employ a tactical feline security force to guard a collection of porcelain dolls. I waited for the weekend. Saturday night. The neighborhood was loud. Barbecues, music, the hum of lawnmowers dying down. Perfect cover. I decided to do a reconnaissance run. I didn't want to break in. I'm not a criminal. I just wanted to get close enough to the back window to see what the night watch was guarding. I dressed in dark clothing. I know how ridiculous that sounds, a 50-year-old accountant playing ninja in his own backyard, but you didn't see the way those cats moved. I hopped the low fence between our properties. The grass in her yard was uncut, kept long. Intentional? Probably.
Hide the ground sensors or the traps. I moved slow, heel to toe. I scanned for the black cats. I couldn't see them. That was bad. If you can't see the sentries, they're already watching you. I reached the back patio. The curtains were drawn, but there was a gap, a sliver of light. I crept forward, pressing my back against the siding. I held my breath. I leaned in. The room wasn't a living room. It was a server farm. Rows of black towers hummed with blue LEDs. Cooling fans whirred softly. Cables snaked across the floor like fibers. In the center of the room, Mrs. Higgins sat at a multi-monitor setup. She was typing furiously. On the screens, I saw scrolling code, satellite maps, and bank routing numbers. She wasn't a cat lady. She was a data haven, a black site information broker. The cats were perfect. Dogs bark and trigger noise complaints. Electronic security can be hacked or looped. But 20 cats? Biological motion detectors that don't need Wi-Fi. I was so focused on the screens, I didn't hear the noise above me. A low, guttural growl. I looked up.
Perched on the gutter, directly above my head, was a Siamese. Its eyes reflected the ambient streetlight. It wasn't wearing a collar. It was wearing a harness. A small, sleek camera was mounted to its chest. It hissed. Suddenly, the yard came alive. From the bushes, from under the deck, from the roof, a dozen pairs of eyes opened. I scrambled back, tripping over a garden hose. "Nice kitty," I whispered, my voice trembling. They didn't pounce. They circled. They were herding me. They pushed me toward the center of the yard, away from the exit. The back door slid open. Mrs. Higgins stepped out. She held a laser pointer in one hand and a suppressed pistol in the other. She looked bored. "Mr. Henderson," she said. Her voice wasn't shaky anymore. It was cold, hard iron. "I was wondering when you'd make your move. You have a very loud telephoto waves." I froze. Hands up. I was just looking for my cat." "You don't have a cat, Arthur. You have a goldfish and a divorce settlement you're still bitter about." She stepped off the porch.
The cats parted like the Red Sea to let her through. She stopped 5 feet from me. "You're running a server farm," I stammered, "in a residential zone. The power grid can't handle that." "The power grid is bypassed," she said dismissively. "And it's not a server farm. It's an air-gapped escrow for sensitive corporate data. When companies want to steal from each other but don't want a digital trail, they come to physical couriers. I'm the vault." She gestured to the Siamese on the roof. "And this is my perimeter. Better than lasers. Cats are natural predators. They notice intent." "Are you going to shoot me?" I asked, eyeing the silencer. "In this housing market? God, no. The cleanup is a nightmare." She lowered the gun slightly. "But we have a problem. You've breached my anonymity. My clients value discretion above all else. If they know a neighbor is keeping a logbook, they get nervous. When they get nervous, they burn the asset." She sighed, looking around at her garden. "I liked this house. The water pressure was excellent." "I won't say anything." I lied.
She smiled. It was a terrifying smile. "I know you won't, because if you do, I released the footage from Mr. Whisker's body cam there. She pointed to the Siamese. And I edited it to make it look like you were creeping in windows for a very different reason. Who do you think the police will believe? The sweet old lady with the knitting hobby? Or the divorced loner in all black trespassing at midnight? The threat hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. It was brilliant, grounded. Destroying my reputation was far more effective than killing me. "Go home, Arthur," she said softly. "Forget you saw the servers. Forget the cats. Go back to watching the mailman." She clicked the laser pointer. The red dot hit my chest. 12 cats hissed in unison. I ran. I vaulted the fence with an athleticism I haven't possessed since high school and scrambled into my back door, locking all 3 deadbolts. I collapsed on the kitchen floor, hyperventilating. I didn't sleep. I sat by the window, watching. At 4 a.m., the gray van returned. This time, it was a full extraction.
3 men in coveralls exited the van. They moved with professional efficiency. They carried the server racks out first, loading them into the back. Then came the crates. Mrs. Higgins stood by the van, checking a clipboard. She looked up at my window one last time. She offered a small, mocking salute. Then she did something that chilled me to the bone. She whistled. A sharp 2-note whistle. From every corner of the yard, the cats streamed toward the van. They leapt into the back, one by one. The discipline was absolute. No stragglers. The Siamese was the last one. It paused at the tailgate, looked at my house, and vanished inside. The doors slammed shut. The van rolled away, silent as a ghost, disappearing down Sycamore Court. By sunrise, the house was empty. I walked over there the next morning. The "For Rent" sign was already back up. I peered through the back window. The room was bare. Carpet indentations where the racks had been were the only proof. I walked to the back fence. I needed something to be real. I needed to know I wasn't crazy.
Stuck in the wood of the fence, right where the Siamese had been perched, was a single claw. But it wasn't bone. I pulled it out. It was titanium. A prosthetic climbing claw, serrated for grip. I pocketed it. The neighborhood is quiet again. A young couple is moving in next week. They have a golden retriever. I see them unloading boxes of normal, boring things. But I'm still watching, because now I know what normal looks like, and I know how easily it can be faked. I check the stray cats on the street now. I look at their eyes. I look for the intelligence. Yesterday, a tabby sat on my fence. It just sat there, licking its paw. I stared at it for 10 minutes. Finally, it meowed, fell off the fence, and chased a butterfly. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. Just a cat. But I kept the titanium claw on my desk. A reminder. The world is full of monsters, but the scariest ones aren't under the bed. They're next door, wearing cardigans, weaponizing nature, and stealing your Wi-Fi password. I'm the watcher, and I'm the only one who knows the truth.
And that's just how I like it.